Mr. Brad has been making disparaging comments about my client to the children, calling her a delusional alcoholic, that she's trying to take his money and ruin him. He's been given the pleadings to the children. When my client tries to reach out to him regarding that communication, his response is, "Well, go talk to your boyfriend," which is very interesting because my client does not have a boyfriend.
Contrary to what she's saying, she doesn't have a boyfriend. She's not moved in. We have evidence that he has.
Court will note the appearance of Ms. Reed on behalf of the plaintiff, Mr. Kelly on behalf of defendant. This matter is before the court on two motions of the plaintiff, one for temporary custody, parenting time support, spousal support, and the other for, again, a mutual restraining order. Ms. Reed.
Thank you, Editor. I'll start with custody first. We're requesting a temporary order that awards the parties joint legal custody, parenting time to the defendant on alternating weekends with alternating holidays, and my client primary physical custody. She's been the primary care provider for the children their entire lives, not only to the parties' children, but to also Mr. Brad's children from another relationship. One of those children still remains in the home with my client, and his other two children are back with their moms. Since the parties have separated, Mr. Brad has exercised a very sporadic parenting time. He claims it's been every weekend, but in actuality, he's only exercised 15 visits since the parties separated in June, only 5 of those being overnights. And he refuses to communicate with my client regarding the parenting time, maybe only giving her 20 minutes notice. And when my client tries to reach out to him regarding that communication, his response is, "Well, go talk to your boyfriend," which is very interesting because my client does not have a boyfriend. I have received Mr. Kelly's response, and he claims that this gentleman named Trent has moved into the home. That is not true. There's no other individual living in the home other than my client and their minor children at this time. Mr. Brad has been making disparaging comments about my client to the children, calling her a delusional alcoholic, that she's trying to take his money and ruin him. He's been given the pleadings to the children, which is not appropriate. And most recently, when he only gave my client 20 minutes notice about parenting time and returning the children, instead of waiting for my client to come home and unlock the home for him, he broke in through the back screen door and I believe broke the padlock that is on the marital bedroom and rummaged through some of my client's items, which is also not appropriate. So we are requesting that he has alternating weekend parenting time, to have that set schedule so everybody knows what's going on. And our request for spousal support, I did meet with my client briefly this morning to review the response and get some clarification on the numbers. It's my understanding that Mr. Brad has been paying the mortgage, even though there was some confusion because he did get a realtor to try and sell the house potentially out from underneath my client. He also threatened to remove her from the insurance, so he is paying that now upon receipt of our motion. So there are some of those bills, a very few that he is paying. He is approximately giving her $200 a month towards the bills, which is not much when she's taking care of all the children as well as all the other bills that she is paying. She did change the lease agreement to lower that lease payment, contrary to what defendant claims. So right now, based on my conversation with my client, there's about a $500 to $600 deficit per month with the bills. She is trying to get more overtime with her work. Right now, she's working approximately 50 hours per week, trying to make up with some of these bills. And so we are requesting temporary spousal support and maybe $500 to $600 a month to help with that deficit. And we are requesting that mutual restraining order be in place because of the threats of selling the home, removing her from insurance, and other things.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kelly.
Your Honor, I'll start with the spousal support. The figures that she's provided, some of them are not accurate, others are inflated. And when you actually take out what he's paying, there's no deficit whatsoever. You have to keep in mind, my client was requested by her client to move out of the marital home in June. He did so to keep the peace. He should not be essentially punished for doing that, as well as, contrary to what she's saying, she doesn't have a boyfriend. She's not moved in. We have evidence that he has. We have evidence that shows that these people go in and out of that home at all hours of the night. The children are telling this guy, my client, that this guy has moved in. He is living there. It's completely inappropriate. We have witnesses that have been advised of domestic violence situations that have happened between her client and her boyfriend. If he's doing that in a public place, you can only imagine what the atmosphere at home is like. So we'd request him to be removed out of the home. And if he doesn't live there, like she says, then that shouldn't be an issue. Spousal support, again, Your Honor, this is a 12-year marriage. She makes $25 an hour. He makes $32 an hour. There is not a massive gap in income there. He has been forced to essentially incur his own expenses and living expenses. He simply does not make the money to be able to afford to support two households like he has been doing. The marital home is ultimately going to end up being sold unless her client can actually afford to refinance and pay the equity out of the house. He did have a realtor look at it because he wanted to figure out the equity portion, but as the court knows, he's not going to be able to sell a home without her cooperation. So that's a little bit far-fetched. So in regards to the status quo order, I think that is probably going to need to be looked at in more depth, especially when he's getting his own place that he's going to have to be supporting. That's coming up this weekend. He believes he'll have it. He'll be within 20 minutes of the children. And he would be requesting either week on, week off parenting time or a 2-2-5 schedule. He's a very involved parent. He always has been, Your Honor. To suggest otherwise is just disingenuous. I would request to the court, if a temporary order is going to be put in place, that an equal parenting time schedule be put in place until we can have a further hearing, because he will be having a residence close and nearby. Finally, Your Honor, in regards to the child support, then that can be calculated accurately with the number of overnights and their incomes, etc. I don't believe spousal support is warranted under this situation. And we would request of the court to deny that request at this point in time. The mutual restraining order, that's simply standard. We'd have no issue with that. Thank you.
What is your response to Ms. Reed's statement that since June, he's only had 15 visits and only 5 overnights?
Your Honor, he stays at an Airbnb, which is 2 hours away, close to where his work is at. He is getting a place closer. He indicates to me that he has seen the kids every weekend. Whether that translates to overnights or not, I'm not sure. I could have Mr. Brad sworn in comment about that if the court would like. However, being 2 hours away, he is limited in terms of his abilities to see the kids. And again, he shouldn't be punished for moving out of the house to keep the peace for a situation that essentially plaintiff had part and parcel in creating. But he will have a place nearby to allow him to exercise that parenting time, including overnights.
Okay. Well, the court heard the arguments in this matter. It does appear that, again, that he's had limited contact since June. The court will maintain the status quo. The court will grant the parties joint legal custody. The court will grant the plaintiff physical custody in this matter. Will award to the defendant standard parenting time, the midweek to commence on 9/11/2024, and the alternating weekends to occur on 9/13/2024, as well as alternating holidays. Court will grant to him the next holiday, which effectively would be Thanksgiving, and then alternating thereafter. The court would order support pursuant to the Michigan Child Support guidelines and the formula. The court would order that the parties would each pay 1/2 of the mortgage, the taxes and insurance on the marital home during the interim period of time, and the court will reserve on spousal support and would in fact enter a mutual restraining order against the disposing, secreting, or otherwise impairing any of the marital assets. Ms. Reed, you can prepare that order and submit it under 7-day. Talk to Mr. Kelly and work out if in fact you agree that the income is your client having 25 hours and the defendant having $32 per hour.
I don't make.
Ma'am, you can talk to your attorney.
Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, in relation to the issue of the boyfriend being out of the marital home.
I'm not going to address that now.
Okay.
Okay. That will be the order. Ms. Reed, you can submit under 7-day notice.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good day.